Hi everybody, Jeff Kelly here. Today I wanted to show you my Weatherby 460 Magnum, which is the most powerful commercially made rifle in the world. It is the only rifle that is certified for whale hunting, along with any thick-skinned creature that walks the earth: elephants, rhino, Cape buffalo, anything you might think of. But the interesting story of this rifle is the Roy Weatherby story. And he was quite an interesting guy. In 1946, he started a bullet manufacturing company, which also made loaded ammunition for 30 cents a round. But he had the opportunity to buy some government bullet making machines that were these gigantic, huge manufacturing machines for $1,000 a piece. He didn't have the $1,000, so he just went about ordering copper tubing and some lead wire and melding it down and making his own bullets out of a small shop, and that's how he got started. Just wanted to give you a slow look at my rifle here, because it's really a beautiful example of craftsmanship. This one was made in 1974 over in Howa, Japan, when Roy Weatherby moved his production from Southgate over to Japan to save costs, but they were still using the beautiful wood and everything. And this here is a Pendleton D Kicker. That's what they used to call a muzzle brake back then. And it was a $50 option on the gun. The barrel's 26 inches long. As I say, the caliber is 460 Weatherby Magnum. And you had a option of getting the iron sights on it. You had an option of getting a scope on it. The gun came all sighted in, and it had the strongest bolt known to man. He designed the stock after shotguns, so it would be easy to sight in. Here's the other side. You can take a look at it. It is just as beautiful. The cheek piece he made sloping to a upward direction, so it would be easier on your cheek when you fired the rifle. It generates about 100 pounds of recoil, and the maximum load generates roughly about 8,100 foot-pounds of energy, and goes at about sends a 500 grain bullet at roughly 2,700 feet per second. So that makes it the most powerful round out there. 8155 with a breech pressure of 55,130 and 2,707 feet per second, with 126 grains of 4350 powder. So it is quite strong. In 1957, Winchester, the Model 70, had come out with an African round, the 458 Winchester Magnum. You can see it on the left there. Against the 460 Weatherby Magnum, and the Weatherby Magnum generated about 50% more power than the Winchester 458. In 1957, Africa changed the rules on the size of bullet you needed to go after the big game animals, and it was a 40 caliber bullet. That's why Roy Weatherby went from his 378 caliber and necked it up to a 40 caliber in 1957. So in early 57, Roy Weatherby wanted to create the strongest bolt ever made. There was a lot of hand loaders that were overloading the cartridges and having blown primers and ruptured case heads and getting the gases forced back in their face and eyes. And he wanted to take the normal 70,000 copper units of pressure up to 200,000 copper units of pressure with his bolt. And so he countersunk the bolt face to enclose the case head, and with the bolt fitting into a counterboard barrel breech, it made it impossible for the case head to rupture. His design featured 9 lugs like an artillery breech lock. Along with these multi-lugs, he was determined that they would not stand out beyond the periphery of the bolt itself. He wanted the same diameter as the bolt body, and the bolt body to be the same diameter as the inside diameter of the receiver, so that when the bolt was worked back and forth, it would have a smooth, fluid movement instead of a sloppy fit typical of other actions. He tested the bolt against a Mauser bolt until the Mauser bolt started having the case freeze up inside the chamber, and that was about 85 to 95,000 psi. He continued testing his bolt until he couldn't get any higher pressures, and then he took a 180 grain bullet and put it down the barrel, and then took a loaded round with another 180 grain bullet with 78 grains of 4350 powder behind it, and fired the rifle, and it pushed both bullets down the barrel and did no damage to the rifle. Then he increased the size of the bullet to a 220 grain bullet and did the same thing, and it still didn't do any damage to the rifle. So this was considered the strongest bolt ever made. So naming the Mark V action was an interesting story. He had 5 different working models of this action. He showed it to a friend of his, Elgin Gates, who worked over at Mercury Outboard Motors. And at Mercury Outboard Motors, they had a habit of naming their new motors the Mark II, 3, 4, and so on. And because they had 5 iterations of this bolt, Gates told Weatherby, he said, "Why don't you just name it the Mark V?" And he did, and that's how the Mark V got its name. And here's a look at the underside of the gun. It's beautifully engraved, and it's another shot of the walnut with the inlay in the pistol grip there. It's really a fine rifle. I picked it up several years ago. I just like the quality of it and the craftsmanship. And I'll show you a looking down the sights here in a second. And I just wanted to mention again that the 460 Weatherby is one of the very few rifle cartridges approved by the International Whaling Commission for the harvesting of whales. The cartridge was deemed to have the penetration necessary to penetrate to the brain stem to provide a quick kill for the whales. And the Makaha people of the Pacific Northwest have used this rifle cartridge for decades hunting whales. And here's how you break open the magazine and the way it looks there down the bore, and I hope you can see the lugs there and what the bolt goes into. And here's the book where I got most of my information. Was Weatherby, the Man, the Gun, the Legend by Gritz and Tom Grissom. And there it is, the Weatherby 460. I hope you enjoyed it, and just click the logo down there in the right hand corner to subscribe.